The disease came without warning, without mercy, and without a cure. It swept across borders faster than bullets, shattered economies, silenced cities, and brought the world to its knees. It began without a sound. No battles, no warnings. Just a few ghost ships, drifting into the coast of Sicily. Sails torn, crews strangely quiet. Below deck, something deadly had already escaped. Within weeks, entire towns were gone. Within months, half of Europe was dead. Streets became graveyards. Doctors wore beaked masks, afraid of the very air they breathed. Children buried their parents. Parents buried their children. And everywhere there were whispers of curses, of punishment from God, or the end of the world. This is the true story of the Black Death. Not just a plague, but the event that changed history forever. How it all began. It started far to the east, across deserts, over rivers, and through the mountains. The year was 1346. In the heart of Central Asia, a tiny, invisible enemy was multiplying. Inside rats, inside fleas. This wasn't the first time plague had appeared, but this time something was different. It had found a new path, the Silk Road, the vast network of trade routes stretching across Asia, carrying silk, spices, and death. Fleas hid in the cargo. Rats traveled with merchants. Town by town, caravan by caravan, the disease crept westward. Then it reached the Black Sea. In the port city of Kaffa, a strange and terrifying siege unfolded. Mongol soldiers, dying from the plague, began catapulting infected corpses over the city walls. It may have been the world's first act of biological warfare. Italian merchants fled in panic, but they didn't leave the plague behind. They carried it with them, aboard their ships, toward Europe. In October 1347, a few merchant ships appeared on the horizon near Messina, Sicily, drifting slowly. At first, no one noticed anything unusual, but as the ships approached, a chilling silence took hold. No shouting from the decks, no greetings, just silence. The sails were torn, ropes hung loose, black flags fluttered in the wind. When dock workers climbed aboard, what they found would stay with them forever. Dozens of sailors, dead in their bunks, the survivors barely alive. Their bodies were covered in black, oozing sores the size of apples. Some had vomited blood. Others were delirious, speaking to people who weren't there. The worst of them, their skin had turned deep purple, as if they were rotting from the inside out. The authorities ordered the ships to leave immediately, but it was too late. The plague had already slipped ashore, hidden in the cargo, carried by rats and fleas. Within days, people in Messina began to fall ill. Within weeks, hundreds were dead. This wasn't just a health crisis, it was the collapse of society. Some priests refused to give last rites. Entire families locked themselves inside, only to die together. The wealthy fled. The poor had nowhere to go. Mass graves were dug outside city walls. Huge pits, filled day and night. And still, the carts kept coming. "Bring out your dead," echoed through the streets. In some towns, the dead were no longer buried. Corpses lay stacked in churches, left in the open air, until animals dragged them away. And this was only the beginning. As winter came, the plague moved inland. Trade routes, pilgrimages, merchant roads, all became highways of death. In Marseille, entire neighborhoods disappeared in a month. In Paris, the dead outnumbered the living. In England, grave diggers worked around the clock. Some towns lost 70 to 80% of their population. It's around 4 people out of 5. No one was safe. Even cats and dogs were blamed, hunted in the streets, believed to be spreading the disease. But killing cats made things worse. With fewer cats, the rat population exploded, and with more rats came more fleas, more fleas, more plague. People were desperate. They prayed. They fasted. Some even whipped themselves in the streets, hoping pain might bring divine mercy. But the plague didn't care. It kept moving, from village to village, from body to body, silent, invisible, unstoppable. Fear, blame, and madness. As the plague spread, Fear began to take over. Not just fear of death, but fear of everything. Neighbors stopped trusting each other. Families locked their doors. Even parents abandoned their sick children. Priests fled their churches. Doctors refused to treat the dying. No one knew what was causing the plague, so people searched for answers and someone to blame. Some blamed the stars. Others spoke of bad air, wearing bird-like masks stuffed with herbs to purify what they breathed. Many believed it was God's punishment, a sign of divine anger. In towns and cities across Europe, groups known as flagellants began to appear. They marched barefoot through the streets, whipping themselves with metal-tipped cords, chanting hymns as blood ran down their backs. Crowds stood in silence, watching, wondering. They believed that if they suffered enough, maybe God would show mercy. But the plague didn't stop, and soon, fear gave way to something even darker: hatred. In many places, people turned against the Jews, accusing them of poisoning wells and spreading the disease. Entire communities were wiped out, burned alive, not by the plague, but by their neighbors. It became one of the deadliest waves of anti-Semitism in history. Meanwhile, others turned to desperate remedies. Some believed that sitting in a sewer might cleanse the body. Others drank crushed emeralds or rubbed onions on their sores. They burned aromatic herbs, burned their clothes, burned anything they thought might stop the death. But nothing worked. In the cities, death became normal. Some people danced in the streets, not out of joy but out of madness. Others walked through towns with flowers pressed to their faces, trying to block the stench of rotting flesh. Some held parties in graveyards and saying, if we're going to die, we may as well enjoy the end. It was a time when the line between sanity and survival began to blur. And through it all, the plague kept moving, silent, unseen, unstoppable. And then, as suddenly as it came, the plague began to fade. By the early 1350s, it had burned through city after city, leaving millions dead in its wake. Some villages lost every soul. Entire towns vanished from the map. Europe had never seen anything like it. But out of the ashes, something new began to grow. With so many gone, there weren't enough people left to work the land. Fields lay empty, crops rotted. But now, peasants were needed. Landowners, once powerful, begged them to return. They offered money, freedom, and rights they had never given before. For the first time in centuries, the lower class held real power. The old system of feudalism, where kings and lords ruled unchallenged, began to crack. Across Europe, a question started to echo. Why should we obey those who abandoned us? The priests had fled. The doctors had failed. Trust in religion and tradition was shaken to its core. In its place, something new began to rise: science. People started asking questions about the body, about disease, about the world itself. And from those questions came progress. Cities were rebuilt. New ideas took root. In Italy, just a generation later, the first sparks of something extraordinary appeared: the Renaissance, a rebirth of art, science, and thought. Would it have happened without the plague? Maybe. But many historians believe the Black Death shattered the old world and cleared the path for a new one. A world where knowledge grew faster than fear, where people, scarred by loss, began to look toward life with new eyes. The Black Death changed everything. It tore down old systems and forced humanity to rebuild. Today, its shadow reminds us, even in the darkest times, new beginnings are possible. Now imagine yourself living through those dark days. How would you have felt? What would you have done? Share your thoughts in the comments below.